want to experience a smooth and enjoyable sound experience. So one of the best ways to do that is to be muted unless you're speaking in this moment. So we're going to take just a minute or two to show you some things that will help all of us to work together to meet both goals. So if you go to the cursor, if you move your cursor to the bottom of your screen, there's a black toolbar that will appear, and there are 3 things that are important to us there. So you'll notice in the left corner there's a microphone icon. So if you click that icon now, no problem, you'll just see if you're muted or unmuted. By looking at the picture of your name, you'll see that microphone icon. If it's got a slash through it, you're muted. And then to be unmuted, just go to that bottom toolbar, click mute or unmute. It's like an on-off toggle switch. If you're on the phone, we finally know some codes for you. So *6 mutes and unmutes your line like an on-off switch. Okay. So for participation, there are 2 ways you can participate: by raising your hand or by typing in the chat. So we'll do our best as facilitators to monitor these areas and to call on you to participate when you express you have something to share. So to raise your hand digitally, go back down to that black bar at the bottom of your screen, click Participants. So a panel will open at the side of your screen and you can see your name along with everyone else's on the call. So do you see the button where you can raise your hand? Click that now and see how the hand shows next to your name. So click it again and it puts your hand down. So if you choose to participate during this call, remember to put your hand down after so we can see clearly who is ready to participate next. I know it's hard to remember, we'll try together, and if one of us clicks off your hand so that it doesn't distract us and you really do have something else to add, please just put your hand up again. Another way to participate is to type in the chat. So along the bottom toolbar again, click chat, and another panel will open at the side of your screen. So at the bottom of that panel, you'll see to everyone, and you can also change who you send a chat to. So when you click enter, your comment or your question will be sent. So go ahead and try that now. And we'll monitor the chat box too, and we'll bring that into conversation when needed. One last tip solves 90% of sound quality issues, especially echoes and feedback, and it's for you to use the headset. So when the sound comes out of your computer speaker, it sometimes gets picked up by your computer's microphone and it causes echoes. So if the sound goes through your headset straight into your ears, it doesn't interfere with your microphone and there's a much cleaner sound. So that's that.
Anne-Marie? This is Pete. Question. When I hover over my name on the participant box,
yes,
it says blue boxes come up that say mute and rename. I don't get to put my hand up. What am I doing wrong?
You don't have to hover over your name. So when that participant's box comes up at the bottom, there should be a tab that's like mute me and raise hand. Yeah, I know it's a little tricky. There's so many places to look.
Okay, got it.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. So you can get a CCU for participating in today's call, and to receive it, please email the opening and closing word to cceu@adhdcoaches.org within 24 hours. So today's opening word is being, being. Please note that the email address has changed. It's cceu@adhdcoaches.org. You might want to write down the opening word for yourself to have it to send to us later. If you have feedback for us too about your experience today, or if you want the link to purchase the conference recordings, just add a little note to that email and we'll be sure to see it and help you out. So, okay. So we want to be careful to lay a foundation for the tone of the conversation today. We have coaches from many different training backgrounds and even more diversity among us based on personal style and experience. So we also recognize that working in this field can be fairly isolating And having opportunities like this to discuss our experiences with other professionals and learn from one another is really valuable. That being said, this is a wonderful opportunity to practice the art of discussing and exploring different perspectives in a respectful way. Not getting personal, but keeping our focus on the topic and making room for different experiences. Seeking to listen and understand the perspective of another, even when we disagree, is something that is much needed in the wider world, and we can lead the way by practicing in forums such as this. So today, we start with the foundation that as coaches, our interactions with clients are guided by the core competencies. And then we dig deeper, we live into the competencies with our clients, employing powerful questions and direct communication, and we encounter clients whose favorite response is, I don't know. We work with competency number 8, creating awareness, and every attempt to invoke inquiry for greater understanding and awareness and clarity is met with a blank stare from the client. So especially when working with students, they may not have the language to express their experience or to realize the variety of options that they have when designing actions. So we have to meet our clients where they are and find a way to partner with them to design actions, set goals, manage progress and accountability, other core competencies. So there are also unique aspects to the role of ADHD coach, as most of us know, which differ from general life coaches. So we thought, it might be a while since you've seen this, so we thought Kay could introduce you or remind you of this delicate dance in ADHD coaching.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. So in our discussions about presenting this and achieving the objective that we hope to achieve for everyone, we went back to the ADHD Coaching Matters book that was written by Sarah Wright. And I just want to give one very brief moment to honor Sarah. She's a founding member of the ADHD. She's been a coach forever. She saw all of this happen, and in that process, she wanted to describe for new coaches and review for coaches that have been around for a while what ADHD coaching is, because it really is different. So we have 3 areas: life coaching, skills coaching, and education, and we strive to do all of these things. I'm just going to read Sarah's words because they just say it all. Life coaching. The client is regarded as an intact, creative, and resourceful person. And the coaching is a collaboration, client-centered, client-driven, and confidential. The coach partners with the client in a thought-provoking and creative process to facilitate the client's actions towards self-awareness and achievement of the client's self-identified goals, providing structure and accountability as needed to help the client achieve those goals. That's a lot of words, but it says it all. So we do life coaching like regular coaches. And then there's skills coaching for people, for ADHD coaches and executive function coaches, I might add. The coach and client collaborate to develop conscious awareness of the client's strengths, challenges, and resources, and leveraging that awareness, develop conscious competence, creating systems and strategies tailored to the client's assets and environment that support and strengthen the client's ability to manage the pragmatic aspects of life. And then we have education. The coach shares research-based information regarding aspects of attention deficit, hyperactive disorder, and related topics relevant to the client's needs and interests. The coach may also offer information regarding tools, resources, and referrals as needed and requested by the clients. If you're like me, I would have had to take notes frantically to remember all that. So we just suggest that you review this in Sarah's book. And I think, Christine, can they purchase this from?
They can purchase it on the ACO website.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I would highly suggest you do that. And this is an incredible handbook. And so moving on.
Yeah. So when Kay mentions ADHD education, or there's an opportunity for skills coaching, it's really easy to lean towards being directive. And so it's important, I think, in this moment to spend a little bit of time just defining what we mean by directive and curiosity, just so that we have a shared language and understanding between us for this conversation, just as it's important to have shared language between coach and client. So when I say directive, I mean coming from the perspective of, well, the coach knows what's best for you. So I'm also wondering what it means. I'm curious what other people think about what it means to coach from a place of curiosity. So if you'd like to share some of your thoughts about that, you can either raise your hand by using that toolbar from participants, or put something in the chat. And I think Christine's watching the chat. I'll watch for hands.
And I see Ruth has her hand raised.
Okay, great. Go for it, Ruth.
The first thing that popped into my mind was the idea of, along with that curiosity comes, I think quite naturally, a sense of non-judgment. And we do that not just with our words, but with our tone of voice. And I feel like it's a really important part of what we do as coaches.
Thanks, Ruth. Awesome. And Lisa?
Like the perspective of getting to know a new person. If I go to a party and I have friends of friends, I really am curious. I want to know, who is this person? So I might bring my curiosity with some like kindness and some enthusiasm, because I really do want to know who they are and what they're looking to accomplish in the coaching. So that little kid in me that I just want to find out about them. It helps me. My questions are much more authentic, and it doesn't seem as like I'm being, stuck to a particular paradigm or something. And I will sometimes tell my clients that if I'm directive, it's with a lowercase d, that there will be times where I'll be wanting to share information with them, but that I'll always ask permission.
Ooh, yeah, I think that asking permission is so key, because it really respects that place of equality between the coach and client, and also that they know the best for their lives, right? So it's not coming from a place of being directive and knowing for the client, but truly being curious about, how do they perceive this, and what are they thinking, and how are they connecting the dots? I see one way, but I wonder how they're connecting the dots of what we're speaking about. Anybody else?
I see Ruth has her hand back up.
Oh, she looks surprised by that. Okay. Okay, Andrea.
I guess there's a quote that I love around curiosity, and it's by John Ruskin, and it's, "Curiosity is a gift, a capacity of pleasure in not knowing." And I think that that's really important, because I think it's important to come to that call and that place with being really okay with not knowing, and being really open to understanding that this person in front of you has a lot about them that you'll never know and that you might not know.
Beautiful, Andrea. Would you do me a favor and just put the person's name in the chat for people who may have missed that?
I can copy it and paste it right now.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. That is a beautiful quote.
Yeah. Brooke, what do you have to add to that?
Oops, hold on. Brooke, hold on. Repeat that because you were muted.
Okay. Coaching without answers, coaching without judgment, coaching without your instincts getting in the way of what the results are. Really just letting the client have the conversation and being open as a coach to see where it goes.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Peter, I see you have your hand up as well.
Yes, I like to remind myself that we all see the world through our own eyes. So if you and me are both looking at a tree, we see the tree, but then as that comes into our brain, that tree takes on different meanings for different people. So everyone's view of the world is unique.
Yeah, Thanks, Peter. That's great. I think it's important to remember too that in coaching, we're coaching the who and not the what. So, you know, the client is often focused on what they want to change or solve, quote unquote, solve. And so this results in a subtle or not so subtle perspective of fixing the problem, or even worse, like fixing the client. So that, you know, just invites this power imbalance where the coach has the answers and strategies. And as many of you have just so eloquently described, staying in curiosity helps avoid that, and also really placing our focus and attention on the who of the client really creates that equal respect and partnership.
Emery, Ted has his hand raised. I'm going to unmute him.
Okay,
Wait.
great.
Go ahead,
Thanks,
Ted. Oops, wait.
Yeah, it just occurred to me that visual here, of the blackboard with who, what, etc., that it's about asking questions, not much more than making statements.
Yeah, great way to sum up. Christine, can you move us to the next slide, please?
Absolutely.
So when we come from this perspective and understanding that our clients are creative, resourceful, and whole, sometimes we're not met there right away by our clients. So sometimes they don't believe that they're creative, resourceful, and whole, especially if they come into coaching pressured by parents or spouses or bosses to fix their shortcomings due to ADHD. So some clients believe to some extent that they're broken. And so we have to hold that image of the client as creative, resourceful, and whole for them and call them into that knowing for themselves. And so what do you do as a coach to keep the perspective of the client as an equal partner who is creative, resourceful, and whole? So we already kind of touched on that with some of our previous comments. If there's like another shade of that you have to share, we have a minute or two before we move into some cases. Lisa?
So having something like that in our introduction to them, or our paperwork or welcome, can set the tone, and then I will reiterate that, because a lot of our clients may be referred to us by a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or they may have just been diagnosed, and they're maybe looking through the lens of the diagnosis and seeing the lack or the psychopathology or whatever, however they're framing that. And for us to say, like, I even had a young man in my group yesterday say to me, I'm really, I struggle because I just feeling I'm not being enough. And if we can communicate them, not only are you enough, you're the only you in all of time, and let's have you love your life. And it's a little, it's another framework that we're inviting them to look through. Like, we want them to join us in that perception.
Yeah. Thanks, Lisa. Adela.
Hi. I look at it more as this is an exploration and a journey that we're going to be taking together. And I am absolutely, genuinely fascinated by all of my clients. And I am eager to be on this journey with them to help them explore their brain and how they think and how their beliefs are affecting them. So for me, it's like we're almost explorers in the jungle, and we're on an adventure together. And so I am eager to learn just as much as they are. So we are both going to learn this together. And that way we're equal partners.
Thanks, Adela. Dana, what do you have to add?
Morning, everybody. I normalize a lot because they think that their symptoms or ADHD challenges are unique to them. So I think normalizing it, not in a way that, everyone does that, but helping them realize that that there are a lot of other people that are like them. They just aren't around them. I think that is also important. And then listening to their self-talk, helping them become much more aware of their self-talk and where they're speaking down to themselves and talking to themselves like they wouldn't speak to anybody else.
Yeah, yeah. It's so important to bring that to their awareness because it is often such an internal pattern of communication that they don't necessarily realize the extent to which they're doing it.
Yes.
So, yeah. And I just noticed in the chat here, Melanie added, she celebrates the client's successes and helps them to identify those successes on a regular basis. So just asking what to celebrate sets the expectation that there always is something going well to celebrate. Yeah. And Brittany adds that curiosity is an ADHD strength. So, you know, we're coming at that from our own place of strength too. Yeah. Okay, so we just wanted to be really mindful that we leave enough time to really dive into the case examples or the scenarios that we have for you today. We have received some feedback from people that it's like, oh, I really love the conversation, and I'm so curious about these case collaboration or the case studies because it really provides a way to put theory into practice and bring it right into the practical. So Krista is starting us off today. She provided our first case scenario, and then Kay will facilitate the conversation and exploration around that. So Krista, go for it.
So I'm going to be introducing a high school student. He attends one of the top 10 high schools in the country. He's diagnosed with both autism and ADHD. Doesn't complete his homework, but when he does complete his homework, he has to submit it. He's combating negative self-talk as well as combating kind of negative talk from and reinforcement from school officials. So how would you use curiosity to approach this client?
We'd like to add that perhaps you have a client just like this. What are some of the ways that you've used curiosity to approach this client?
Well, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. If we have, do we have?
I was just going to say, I was going to jump in and say, you know, I liked what Dana said, you know, keeping normalization, because I have found that with clients sometimes that are having the negative self-talk as well as getting it from people around them, that it's really important to acknowledge to them, you know, like, hey, we're not expecting you to know all of this, you know, that this is something that you're learning, your frontal lobe is still developing, and, you know, just kind of reinforcing the fact that it's a journey. I like somebody else mentioned the journey aspect, and I think that's true as well. So that, you know, we focus on the positive things that are happening instead of getting caught up in this negative kind of swirl and you know, kind of focusing on what's wrong, rather shifting it and figuring out, okay, well, what are our options and how can we move forward?
Absolutely, Krista. I really like that. And I think we can refer back to what we were just talking about with strengths. We start doing a strengths assessment before we do an executive function skills assessment. And a concept being you can use your strengths to deal with your challenges. And one of the things that I really work with high school kids on is find out what your learning intelligence or specific learning style is. Because lots of times they're not aware that there are lots of things that they can do, or lots of different things that other students perhaps are not doing, but with their unique curiosity and that kind of thing, they can do that. So I think approaching these areas where there's some resistance is another really good time to come forward with their strengths and get them to have some positive self-talk. Like, when was the last time you did turn your homework in, and how did that feel? And how did that feel? And so get them back into that situation of success to help them to repeat that success. So who else has got? I'm sure lots of us have had this client.
Adela has her hand raised. Go ahead, Adela.
Well, Kay, thank you for saying half of what I was going to say. Then the other part that that I do in the beginning, besides getting them to explore their strengths and celebrate their strengths, is to really ask them what are their personal goals. Because maybe their goals are, you know, their personal goals are not in alignment with mom and dad's goals or what the school's goals are. So we explore some long-term goals and some short-term goals and goals outside of academics as well, because we're treating the whole person, not just their GPA. So I think it's important to have that conversation. And sometimes, especially in younger clients, I've found personally that the goal is simply help me get mom off my back. And if I can prove a sense of independence and responsibility, and so that I can do it my way, that might be enough. And that might just be the goal. Maybe it's not a grade point average.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed Brittany had a question. Now I'm not looking at the chat, but she was asking what assessment. There is, let's see, it's called the VIA Character Strengths, and that we use with all of our clients. And with high school kids, it's kind of cool because at first it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it goes back to your top values. And then as the coaching sessions go on, it's an opportunity to, I pull that back. I put it in front of me and say, wow, that makes sense with your strength. Another thing is there are, Howard Gardner has the multiple intelligences. And there are also tests for your learning style, whether it's visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. So using all of those, and gosh, I could put it in an email. I can't remember exactly what we use. Another one is there's a personality puzzle that's a kid version of Myers-Briggs. So using those, at least one of those in the very beginning, even in our initial, so that the conversation starts with what are their strengths, and I always ask, what are your accomplishments? What have you done? And lots of times they can't think of what they've done, but parents usually come into the first session and the parents will think of all the neat things they've done, and that makes them feel good. Wow, my parent is acknowledging that I really did something cool. So it might not even be school related like Adela said. So who else?
Okay, I was just thinking with the list of tools that you just mentioned, if you send those to me, that information, whoever sends me emails to receive a CCU, I can get that out to you. So extra incentive to email those opening and closing words.
So do we have any other comments or suggestions or cases you've dealt with, or even if you have a challenge related to this that you'd like to bring up?
Ruth has her hand raised.
Hi, yes. You know, I find myself being very curious about you're saying that the student doesn't complete homework, but sometimes he does and just doesn't submit it. That sounds like a fascinating conversation to hear a little more about that. So it's, you know, I think I'd start with a lot of the things that have already been mentioned that are much more global and broader questions. But personally, I often zoom a little too quickly into the detail, and I immediately I'm very curious about not just what gets in the way of submitting the homework, for example, but how the client feels about that. Is that a point of frustration, or is it at all important to them to work on that or change that? Or there's all kinds of curious questions one could ask, it seems, about that specifically.
Excellent. I like that, Ruth. And it also, even if it's just, well, I left it on my desk, then it gives you an opportunity to get into that, the skills stuff about, well, where can we leave it? So.
Or maybe it doesn't, maybe this client doesn't really see it as a major issue. It just happens,
right.
You know, in which case that wouldn't really be an effective place to go, you know, at least at that point in time. It seems like broader questions about what's important about school, or what as many of you already mentioned, it seems like those are more important at that point.
Yeah, right. Really. Yeah, that's that digging deeper. So it goes even beyond this.
Right, and I was just going to say, if we didn't stay in the curious place, like Ruth said, maybe that's not really the direction to go. If we didn't stay in that curious place, we may have taken the client down a specific direction without being open to, well, maybe that has absolutely nothing to do with it, and maybe it's a totally different path. I wanted to get to Andrea because I know she has her hand raised.
I just wanted to tag on to what you all were just saying, especially what Ruth was saying. Sometimes we jump into something that we know a little bit too soon. So I think there's always that opportunity when you feel yourself ready to pounce on something, stop and pause and ask your client, what else do you know about this? And maybe ask them 2 or 3 times, what else do you know? What else is there? And I did this with a client yesterday. She's been a client for like 2.5 years. And I wanted to say, wow, you have tools to do this. Which of your tools can you use? And I just stopped and said, well, what else do you know? And all of a sudden something came out and I was just like, oh my gosh, you have never talked about that. In 2.5 years, this has never come up. How is this going to influence where you're going today? And it was a huge breakthrough. So there's that curiosity piece. What else? What else? What else?
Yeah, I love that. Love that. And often, I mean, our kids, our students are coming here because their parents sent them. You know, and so, you know, it's really staying in that place of curiosity to see where and what is important to that student is essential to build that relationship so that, you know, we can eventually break through that barrier of, I don't really want to be here.
Absolutely. I always think when we're talking about curiosity, and maybe not even too many people on this call, and certainly not our kids, would remember Columbo, who was this detective that used to go, well, help me understand this. And, you know, that whole concept, as Ruth was saying, help me understand this, you know, definitely curiosity. Anybody else?
I think what we'll do, Kay, is move on to the next one. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, Peter, you are up.
Yes, thank you. Great stuff. I love what Andrea just said. What else do you know? Again, the basis of this is trying not to be directive and stay curious and remember that they are creative, resourceful, and whole. So mine is a college student, a male, 21 years old. I've coached him for, 10 months. He's been in school for 2 years and has, he's failed quite a few courses. Majors in mechanical engineering, a very, very difficult major, certainly from my perspective. I note the car accidents just because they're sort of ADD related. Definitely uses some marijuana, although he seems to have curbed that some. And my last thing, avoids studying his parents and sometimes me when work overwhelms him. He just flunked 2 courses in the first semester. Very nice young man, and smart as a whip. But his parents, I believe, think that engineering, his dad's an engineer, and I think they believe this should be easy for him. And just recently, we've really talked about him conversing with them about the fact that it's not. It's very, very hard for him. But anyway, the base of this is just to not be too directive with him. And so how could you curiously approach this client?
Thank you, Peter.
So we're getting wonderful responses. What have you to say with this guy?
Ruth, go ahead.
I can't help but be very curious about this pot smoking. And I would wonder if just some information for him about the potential impact that may have on his executive functioning, beyond just when he's finished smoking. You know, that there's a lot of times where I think I ask a client, would it be okay for me to share with you some information from this scientific study or whatever. And I find that sometimes students are not aware of the impact that smoking on a regular basis can have in their ability to, even if they don't have ADHD, to do executive functioning activities. I think I might just offer that as non-judgmentally as possible, but simply informationally, assuming that he might not be aware of that. But that raises a lot of red flags for me.
I do quite a bit of that with him, actually.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. I love Melanie is really curious about what classes he's passing and what those classes might have in common. You know, what is the subject matter, the style of the professor, the type of the assignments, or other things going on in his life at that time, and see what a success map might look like. So taking those things that he is doing well and seeing if there's a common thread that, you know, you can start teasing out. I tend to call them ingredients for success. You know, seeing if you can pull out those pieces, I think is what Melanie's getting to, and why is he successful in those areas. Great contribution, Melanie. Thank you. Dana, your hand is raised.
Hello. I'm curious about a couple of things. Some tagging onto what Melanie was talking about, I'm curious about his selection of mechanical engineering as a major. Where is that one of his strengths? Why did he pick that? What's behind it? And then I'm also curious about his car accidents and if he can identify what's behind them. Is he speeding because he's late? Is he not paying attention? Would you need to find a way to keep him more engaged in driving, such as a manual transmission versus automatic? What's behind the accidents?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good one, Dana. Very nice, yes. Brittany just added, she's curious about what he wants, like what are really his goals?
So real quick, so the good news is he's quite passionate about an eventual career related. In other words, school is very difficult, and it's like he needs a degree to do what he's passionate about. So that's a positive.
Lisa's got her hand raised.
Yeah, I had another curious question for him about the marijuana, because we know that a lot of students and non-students are using marijuana to self-medicate, and it could be all different reasons. So if I ask him, what does it do for you? How do you know, why do you like it? What drew you to it? I am curious about that. And sometimes it could unearth that there's some depression or anxiety going on, or it could be it relieves stress. And I have these conversations with a lot of my students, and sometimes they just say it works for dealing with stress at the end of a really long day. It's a way to chill out. And so it may open up a conversation about social pressure, or it may open up a question about finding healthier or other ways of dealing with stress that are really that they would like. Could be meditation or working out or whatever. But some people have found that they'll either minimize it, or they find that they'll acknowledge it doesn't really make them feel good. So there's that.
And Ted, you had your hand raised, and I think I lost you.
I did. Actually, I was going to say something almost along the lines that Lisa did about exploring the why about the marijuana and the impact. I was noticing, it's right above the one that says he avoids studying his parents, etc. What's the connection there? Or what's the connection with car accidents? It's, I live in Massachusetts where now recreational marijuana is legal. So it's a very, there's a whole different environment around it now these days than there used to be too. So
yeah, very nice. Thank you. And I'm really curious, Peter, of how, the classes that he did fail, like if he were the professor, how would he change them? Like what would he want to be different to create his own success in those classes? because I think maybe that would give you some really rich information as well. And Gina said in the chat that she'd want to know what his goals are. Has he mapped out how he'd like to achieve his goals? What does the success look like? The 4 semesters where he did well, what was working for him?
Nice.
Yep, yep. So very nice, everybody. Thank you.
And Adela added that she's curious about how he spends his time when he's not studying. So what activities does he enjoy, and how is he able to take the initiative to pursue those activities?
Yeah, I think there's such an opportunity here for this young adult to learn about himself. Not that, you know, they catch on right away, but I think we really plant seeds. He can learn about his learning style. He can learn about balancing his life. He can learn all these things, and it can be so much more positive than negative. So good luck with it, Pete. He sounds like a neat guy.
Great stuff. Thank you very much.
All right. So let's move on to our adult. And this is the one I'm presenting. It's a 48-year-old adult male. He has not had a full-time job in 5+ years and has been supported financially by his parents. He's a single dad who has not been able to establish boundaries with his son. His goal is to find a full-time job, but he does not complete the actions he identifies that will move him forward to actually securing a full-time job. So how would you approach this client with curiosity? Lisa.
So once again,
sorry.
I didn't. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, wait. I think Lisa's gone.
Lisa, is your hand still up, or is this a new one?
I think it was an old hand up.
Okay, yep, go ahead. Yep, so because she's not there right now. Okay, so go ahead, Kay. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say we've had such incredible responses, and what we are really enjoying, and part of the plan was how do we deal with these different age groups with, you know, there's some similarities and there's some differences. So who's had an adult like this? How could you use curiosity?
Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
Christine, I think we might have the same client because this is very familiar. What I find really fascinating as I've worked longer with this client is that he came to me initially saying, my goal is to find a full-time job. And then when we got to know each other a little bit more, when I got to know his situation a little more, and as we designed actions, man, it was just roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And so it's open conversation about, well, what do you really want? Like he, you know, came wanting a full-time job because it's what he feels he should do. That's the societal pressure and from those who are financially supporting him. But he has some big time fears, and, you know, it's become a really rich, wonderful exploration for him about what he really wants and what he sees as his capacities and his fears around that too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yes, I think it's very fear-based. You know, once you've been out of the field that long, or, you know, out of a career that long, there are definitely many fears about going back or trying to go back. And Gina added in the chat, it sounds like he's trying to tackle too many big goals at once. Has he tried to address one at a time, maybe start with something small and build from there? And because this is one of my clients, we have tried to tackle smaller goals, and still lacking that follow through of just even doing tiny steps. So it's a really interesting case. Anybody else have any ideas on how you might approach this client with curiosity, maybe around the fear or what's going on for him, or what he really wants?
We have four hands up.
Oh, good. Thanks, Kay. Missed those.
Ted?
Yeah, interesting situation. I think there's got to be a lot of beliefs, the whole self-image thing here. What is he says he wants a full-time job, but what does he really believe about himself? Does he believe he can have one? I mean, this guy's 48 years old. He's had a lot of knocks. I'm sure he's had a lot of negative feedback, and I wonder what his parents say to him, what he hears from them or what he's heard from them over the years. I think there's a lot of blocks he's got in terms of just what he thinks actually he can do, what's possible for him. All that negative, I think it's a lot of negative self-talk here that needs to be addressed.
Yep.
Find out, and again, to find out about what it is, and then help him help him with ways to address those things, those limiting beliefs and stuff.
Yeah, great.
Dana, you have a lot of adult clients. What are your thoughts?
What I'm curious about is he even a good candidate for coaching? If it's been a long time and there's no progress on even small things, it seems like he needs to be in therapy. It's, to me, the one of the important things about coaching is the client can move forward and can make changes. And some people can't because there's too many emotional blocks. So I'm curious about that. And that's really there's a lot of other things I'm curious about, but that's the big thing. Is he truly a good coaching candidate, or does he need more therapeutic help?
Thank you, Dana. Really great, great things to think about. I really appreciate that. And Adela in the comments put, I don't know enough, but is depression a factor? Which I think also may go in with what you're saying, Dana. Brittany said, is he able to actually let go of the other responsibility when he tries to do only do smaller steps, which is a good, and I think that's part of it, is he's so overwhelmed trying to manage his son that he tends not to put other responsibilities aside because he just doesn't have those other hands to help. So I think you are right, he's juggling way too much right now. Gina said, if depression, anxiety, fears are getting in the way, I'd want to collaborate with his therapist. I agree about the depression idea. This is from Ruth. I'd be curious to know if he's working with a mental health counselor. Unfortunately, he's not right now. He has dabbled in that, but again, it doesn't seem that he can do that consistently. I've had this type of client show up, this is Melanie, for an intake session, but then not show up for coaching. If this client is actually able to show up for and engage in coaching, that's already something to celebrate. So my question is, why does he keep showing up for coaching sessions? Really great comments in the chat. Thank you, everybody.
And we have several hands up. We also have just 5 minutes. So
let's go to Andrea.
I guess my biggest question is, again, if he's showing up for the coaching, how is he benefiting from identifying these actions, but yet never completing any of them? That's what I'd want to know from him.
Okay, nice, very nice, thank you. How about Alice?
Hi, I'm curious about the jobs he has had in the past. I'd ask him about them, to describe them. What was he doing? Getting him talking about successful jobs could trigger something that would inspire him to look in a certain direction or something like that.
Yep, absolutely. And he was a park ranger. And so where we live in Wisconsin, we don't have any national parks. So he's explored, kind of county parks and hit multiple dead ends. But yes, I love that. Doing further exploration with that. Raja.
I like going back to, we have something also called Shine the Light on What is Right. So for him especially, getting him to bring up all of his successes and strengths.
Thank you. Rachel, go ahead.
Oh, she's muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute her. Okay, Raja, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I don't know how to use this. Anyway, I wanted to piggyback on Andrea's comment. It seems as though there's something he's not, or I don't know this client, but I would be really curious about what happened 5 years ago and why he's not engaging in therapy. It seems as though there is information that he wants to share. So sounds like something he needs to just get off of his chest, and might take a little bit longer before he can engage in any kind of change. So that's what's coming up for me. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah, love it, love it. I'm gonna jump to the chats. Gina suggested maybe he can start by volunteering with an environmental organization, get him outside doing what he loves, but without the pressure of showing up for a job. Yes, I love that. Oh, and then Melanie, I'm sorry, I was just trying to figure out. Melanie also added to her previous comment, and if I were feeling directive, I'd be curious about whether starting with coaching around parenting might free up energy for other matters. So maybe tackling that parent part for him. The loss of career opportunities is huge. I'm curious about ways to explore the grief and the fear. So all wonderful comments. Thank you so much. Anne-Marie, we are almost at the top of the hour, so I am going to turn it back over to you. Wait. Okay, hold on. There you go.
Okay, I think we're good.
Yep.
All right. So we just want to make sure that everyone gets the closing word before we have to leave. So a friendly reminder to submit both the opening and the closing word to cceu@adhdcoaches.org. And we want to make sure we're meeting the professional needs of our members. So we'd love to hear from you, any feedback or ideas for future sessions or other professional development opportunities. You can send us an email to programs@adhdcoaches.org with that information. So thank you so much to everyone on this call for attending and participating in this professional conversation. And a big thank you to everyone on the programs committee for all their hard work. So we'll see you next time, hopefully in February, creating a coaching agreement to partner with our clients. Thank you so much for today.
And I just wanted to add that this recording will be put up. We are in the middle of switching over to a new website. So as soon as we get to this new, more manageable, user-friendly website, which should be coming out in a week or so, this recording will be able to be found on that website. So you can look for it there.
And I just want to make sure that I say the closing word. It's on the screen, but for those who are on the phone, the closing word today is open.
Right. Thank you, Ruth. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you back in February.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.